just heard it. It's totally possible. It's been that kind of day.
I get Sharon all the time. And I'm like, I've got extra letters in there. So, oh my gosh, I don't even have the thing up. Am I sharing a screen anymore? Let me share. Am I sharing now?
Oh, you are sharing now.
Good. Okay. So welcome everybody. It's January 18th, 2024. Meredith isn't with us today because she had a scheduling conflict and we didn't think ahead to get that fixed. Anyways, so it's just me today and I need it because as everyone knows, because every time we come on this, I have something to say about how much I love Microsoft Teams. So I'm real happy today to be learning all things Microsoft with Dr. Angela Burgess, who is one of my cohort. Well, you're not in my cohort, but one of my mentors in my doctoral program, and she is fabulous. So I am going to go ahead and just pass the mic to you, Dr.
Thank you.
Burgess.
So
let me stop sharing.
Dr. Madame. Yeah, so like I said, like Shannon said, I am Angela. My name is Angela Burgess. I got my doctorate back in May, which is one of the ways that Shannon and I know each other. And she asked me to do this back a while ago. And the thing that I'm going to say to start with is I am not the biggest Microsoft person. It is something that I do, but I don't always enjoy it. We are in my district, I'm in Forsyth County, in the Atlanta area, and we have access to both Microsoft and Google. And like Shannon was saying, Shannon and I actually met through a Google. So my first tip, which is probably not what you would be expecting to hear, is that the best way to master Microsoft is to use Google instead, because there's just so many different things that can complicate using Microsoft. And I know this is called mastering Microsoft. There's no way that you can master it in this time. Your head would explode. So I'm just going to go through and share some of my favorite things to do in Microsoft, the things that, like, when I'm looking to do it, I actually do go to Microsoft for it instead of using Google. But one thing that's really important to know before we even start is that not all versions of Microsoft are the same. And if that is making your head hurt, that's what it does to me. So first thing you have to know is that the Windows version of Microsoft is different from the Apple version of Microsoft, is different from the device, like your phone or tablet version of Microsoft. If you're on a computer, then you have to look at, are you accessing the installed computer program or are you accessing it on the web? And then again, with the apps, the Apple apps are not the same as the Android apps, and they don't all play nicely. And then the last piece is, what is your license? Are you a personal? Are you using it for through a personal account, or are you using it through a school account? If you're using it through a school account, do you have an Office 365 account or a Microsoft 365 account? Because those offer different things. And then within each of those, there's 3 levels of licenses. There's an A1, an A3, and an A5. So that's a lot. I mean, that was 5 minutes, basically just going over all the differences. We have at my district, we have an A5 license, which is like the top tier. It offers all the things. So I'm just going to go through and talk about those, but just keep in mind, if I share something and then you go back and you're looking for it, there's any number of reasons why it might not be available to you or why it might look different to you. That's one of the reasons why I really do prefer Google, because it just is, and you just do it. So
I'm going to pipe in right there because I have the different, oh my gosh, because in the program that Angela just completed, and then I have like 6 months left of, having the Microsoft 365 documents versus the Word documents and all the sharing capabilities, I try not to really dislike something, but it is such a pain when your brain has been wired for like the way that Google operates. Trying to backwards design like how to do the thing you need to do in Microsoft is so challenging. So I'm glad that you at least laid all that out, because I didn't even know all those like variations existed.
And sometimes like your OneDrive just doesn't, like if you've got OneDrive on one computer and OneDrive on another computer, even though you're signed into both, sometimes they just don't connect for some reason. And so like, as I was finishing up in the spring, Shannon, something to note is that my OneDrive on my personal computer was not connecting. And the last time I had been making some changes was on my OneDrive at my work computer. And so I had to go up on a Sunday and let myself into my office and sync it. And so then I just stayed up there. I was like, I'm not leaving. I'm just staying here and doing the thing in my empty office.
And I don't want to be a constant like, oh my gosh, I'm so mad at Microsoft. There are bits and pieces of Microsoft that I'm like, these are so much more powerful than I think I would ever need. So I want to give it huge credit for that. It's just hard to go between like the Google brain and the Microsoft brain. So I think
one of the things that, yeah,
but
that's what it is. It can be so powerful, but I think the biggest difference between the two is that Microsoft is all things to all people, and Google is letting you have what everyone actually needs, and then letting you personalize the individual pieces that you need. Whereas Microsoft just puts everything out there for everyone if you have the right license and if you're using the right version of it. And that's why it can be a little bit confusing. As language teachers, one of the things that I think is most powerful is the ways that you can use all of their different voice tools. So that's what I'm going to spend the bulk of my time on today. With this, you have access to Immersive Reader. With some features of Immersive Reader, you also have access to Reading Coach. And Reading Coach does work in different languages. So it's not just something that's available in English. It's available, you can put a passage in French or in Spanish or Italian or German, and then use Reading Coach, and it will evaluate the way that you read that and give you words that you need to practice. And then it will go through and say, practice this, and it will put the word up, it can pronounce it for you, and then you will say it, and it will tell you if you're right or not. You can do dictation, which is a way that I used to tell my students to practice their speaking to see if their pronunciation was right. Because if you say it and it writes it the right way, then your pronunciation was correct. And if it didn't write it the right way, then you need to work on your pronunciation. Reading Coach does that too. Reading Coach does all of those things. But if you're in something that doesn't have that, that's a good way to do that. And then you also have Presenter Coach, which I definitely used when I was practicing for my dissertation defense, because you can go through and it will evaluate how you're speaking, which is a great tool for students. And then closed captioning and translating is also a thing that's available. So I'm going to start with Immersive Reader. Immersive Reader is available in Word, in OneNote, in Teams, in Outlook. It's available in so many places. And what it does, I'm going to move this to the side, and I'm going to share a different screen really quickly. Maybe I'm going to do that. Pause, please. Let me go this way. Okay. So what Immersive Reader will do is I can go through, so I just copied this off of the internet. I'm not publishing it, so I'm not really breaking copyright because I'm just using it for display purposes, and then I will be deleting it. But I can go over here into my view tab. No, view tab. Okay, now I've lost it. This is why I get upset.
I promise I think they just move things overnight. It's like a little Microsoft goblin comes through and just moves a couple of things once or twice.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, why isn't it not working? Why isn't it there?
I use that help tool all the time in Microsoft.
That's what I'm going to go to. Immersive Reader. Yes, actions. Thank you. There we go. So with Immersive Reader, it will come up like this, and it will go through and just take it and make it bigger for you. But you have these different reading preferences as well. So I could say that I want to just show one line at a time. And then as I scroll, I will be able to go through and see different lines. I could see 3 lines at a time if I wanted to. I can also translate it, which for us as language teachers, that might not be something that we want, or we might not want our students to translate it from French into English. But if you're an ESOL teacher, or if you are teaching students, who are not native speakers of the language that you speak, it might be a good tool for them to just, as they're learning, if they're coming in with zero English skills and your instructions are in English, this is a good way to provide an accommodation for them without having to go through and do all kinds of different things. You also have a picture dictionary here. So I could say here with the surgery, I could click on it and it gives me some pictures of what surgery might look like. I could click on announcement and it'll give me a picture. I can also click on that and it will play the word for me. Were y'all able to hear the announcement or the word
No.
announcement?
No.
Okay, well, I must not have shared my audio at the same time. I apologize. And then I could click this play button and it would read the whole thing to me. So I would be able to go through and have it just read to me. And you have different voice settings as well. So you can change how fast or how slow it reads. So if you want to read it, I've done this before with things, especially when I'm reading texts, like academic texts, and I want to go through it faster. I'm a really quick reader, but if I want to concentrate, I might do all three of these things. I might put on the line reader and then also have it read it to me, but maybe at like a 1.25 speed so that I can get through it a little bit faster. And then you just have your basic male and female voices. And then you also have some grammar options here. So if you want it to show you, if you want it to highlight nouns in one color and verbs in another color, adjectives in another color, and adverbs in a color. And you can even have it show the labels for you so that you know what each type of word is. And I just think that's a really cool option.
There's so much just in that right there that I'm like, oh my gosh, imagine using this for a story in class.
Yes,
one that
absolutely.
You've either made for your kids or like some sort of reality that you're looking through. Dang it, Microsoft for the win.
I know
this
is a really cool feature. And then the other one that I really like, this is where you can get into have reading coach. So I'm going to X out. I'm going to turn off my line reader.
Before you exit out.
Yep.
Exit out. Andrea, I think you've got a question. Yeah.
Yeah. How often is it wrong? Because, like, for example, and can you manually go back and fix it if it's wrong? Because leaves in that sentence is not a noun, for example.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's not perfect. No, I mean, nothing is perfect. So for me, with that type of thing, is I would use it as an example of, okay, kids, do you notice the mistake? What's the mistake? What is that word actually?
Okay, but there's no way to manually fix it?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, all right, thank
you.
I've never seen like because I was clicking on it earlier. So if I click on the announcement, that one's boxed. So one of the other things that I really like is this reading coach. And so this is where I can go through, and when I click this play button here to start reading, I can give it access to my microphone. It's going to give me a countdown, and then I can read it. Princess Kate surgery announcement leaves questions, but here's what we know. And it will give me a report. What was my accuracy? How long did I spend reading it? How many correct words per minute? And then how many words do I need to practice? And when I look at practice words, it will tell me that I need to practice pronouncing the word princess. Okay. So it will say that I need to practice the words princess, Kate, questions, and world. And that's because I was talking and I wasn't reading what it said when I first started, because it's expecting you to, as soon as that countdown goes, for you to start reading it. But then I could click on each word, it would pronounce it for me, and then I could repractice my pronunciation. Princess. And so then it tells me your effort is showing, great reading. What's really, really awesome about reading progress is it can also be done if you use Teams with your students. You can do reading progress or reading coach, reading progress in a Teams assignment. So you could give your students a passage to read, and it has all the different languages as well. So that passage could be in French or in Spanish. you could have them read it as a team's assignment, and then they turn it into you, and you get this report for each of your students. And we have a couple of our ESL teachers that are using this. They're using Teams simply with they're using Teams with their students simply for the option of having that reading coach. And the teacher that kind of piloted it last year saw her students on the access test, saw her students' scores on the access test improve by 2 levels from the beginning of the year when they first entered the class. So basically, like, based on last year's access score and this year's access score, she saw her students improve by 2 levels with their spoken English just from using reading coach and Teams assignments. I tell her it's because she's also such an amazing teacher that it's not just reading progress, but it is a really cool tool that is available. And in here, so if Shannon, if you share this presentation out, this is a link that shows you where reading coach is. This is a link that talks a little bit more about immersive reader. Reading coach is also available in like Flip. So like in places where you have immersive reader available, some of those also give you the option for the reading coach, like in Word for Web, which is what I was using, and then the Teams assignment. You can do it in Flipgrid or Flip, which used to be Flipgrid. And a couple of other different things, but I think those are the most commonly used ones. Another thing, like I said, with another tool that is, if you don't have access to the immersive reader and reading coach, you could do dictation. So that's going to be a really good option because it's available just about everywhere. That's a really good option for students to, or for you to dictate what you're saying, and it will do all the different language options in something like PowerPoint, because PowerPoint doesn't have immersive reader. But if you were looking to just practice your speaking, or if you were looking just to make things faster for you, and instead of typing out what you want to say, if you just wanted to speak it and let it do it, that's something that you can do as well. And like I said, there are multiple language options available. I'm going to X out of this. So when I do dictation, if I click on option, I could oh, okay, please refresh. Option, there we go. So I can go through and read whatever I want to say, and it will transcribe that for me. And then I can stop it just by clicking the microphone, or I could say pause dictation. If I wanted to change it to my different languages, I have all these different language options here. Notice you can also filter, you can do auto punctuation and filter sensitive phrases. Alors, je pourrais dire que je veux aller en France la prochaine fois que Shannon y va. Oh, I didn't even start recording myself. Je pourrais dire que je voudrais aller à Paris avec Shannon la prochaine fois qu'elle ira. And notice that I mispronounced ira, and it still got it for me. And I forgot to record it. So, and if we look at what it did, so I originally said je veux, and then I changed it to je voudrais, so I could just edit that out. But it is pretty good with its transcription with your voice typing. So that's a good option available to you as well. It's available in both places. It's a really good place to go through and just kind of free up some of your time when you're looking at things.
Can we say, while you're back on that slide,
Yep.
Something that I was thinking about a lot, because as the program that you've completed and I'm almost done, thank goodness. We've done a lot of transcribing of interviews, and as I was doing it, we've recorded it somewhere, there's an audio file, you plug it into here using transcribe, and it gives you a script. And of course, in my brain, I was like, how could I use this for class? Like, if you think about all the listening activities that you have in some other place, some file somewhere that like Meredith loves having those things off to the side on a Google Doc. You could take all of those files easily, put them in the transcribe button, and then put them in something else, and you've now got reading passages. So you can
Yep.
take this one file and do many, many different things with it. I've really grown to love that transcribe button. So if you're not familiar
Yeah.
with it and you've got audio files in all of your folders, you can do some really cool things with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. You could even just do it if you wanted to do like just a very basic DOK 1 close activity. Just, here's your audio, give them the script and take words out because it will transcribe it for you. And again, just like we were talking about earlier, it's not going to be 100% perfect. You're going to want to go through and check it just to make sure, but it sure does save you the time of pressing play for 5 seconds, typing for 5 seconds, back and
Yes.
forth, when it will just do it for you.
So much.
Yeah. So moving on to PowerPoint. If you're doing with PowerPoint, you have Presenter Coach. You could also do subtitles with different language options. So for example, you could speak one language and have your subtitles be in another language. Which if you're doing 100% in the target language, having that where, yes, you're speaking in the target language, but you could still modify for your lower levels by putting on subtitles in English, even though you're speaking. It just provides, especially if you've got at the very beginning of level 1, that is just a really cool option. You could also do PowerPoint Live, which gives you all kinds of language options. So what that looks like, this is once upon a time, back in those crazy days of online school, I did, our LMS was called It's Learning, and they asked me to do a webinar for them with their French market. So I presented on our LMS on the way that I teach, because I also, in addition to what I'm doing now, I also spent 4 years teaching French 1 online for our virtual academy. And It's Learning, I had a really good relationship with It's Learning. And so they asked me to do a webinar about how I engage my community online in French. It was like all of my worlds coming together in like this mind-blowing moment. It went over so well that they then asked me to do it for their German market. And that's a really cool idea, except for the fact that I don't speak German. So what I was able to do was I did my presentation. So this is the slideshow. This is my presentation that I did. I was able to go through and say that my spoken language was going to be English, but the subtitled language was going to be German. And then when I presented, I was able, let me turn on the subtitles. Where are they? Down here, present live, turn subtitles on. I was able to go through and speak in English about what it was that I wanted to say, and it subtitled it for me in German. And we checked with a couple of people before we got fully into the webinar just to make sure that it was fairly accurate. And so I did an hour-long webinar in English for my German market, and I didn't have to speak in German. So that's a really cool option. The other one that I really like is this Present Live, which I could go in here and give this link where I say that my audience is going to be anyone. And when I do Present Live, it's going to let people join my session and choose their language. So if I was presenting, say for example, if I was an ESOL teacher and I was presenting to a family night, they would be able to join with their language, because there might be 25 different people speaking 25 different languages. I only have to speak English, and it will show them the language that they selected. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, so if you can see my screen, I don't know if it's really great, but I went in ahead and logged in, and as Angela was talking, that's what it looks like on the user end. So, I mean, if you've got families with limited English, this is fabulous. Ooh, Angela.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic tool, especially for when you're communicating with people who do speak a variety of different languages. And I know that, we're saying language teachers, but English is a language. And so you may be teaching French and also have a segment of ESL that you're supporting. So I think that's just a really cool tool that's available. And then notice that I'm doing this presentation, and it also says we've stopped transcribing your words, but the audience can still see the slides and transcript. So that transcript stays there for a little bit longer than I stop presenting. So they'll be able to go back through for the next 30 minutes and scroll and see what did I say at some point in time. So that's just something that I think is a really powerful tool. It uses the same technology that's in the Microsoft Translator app. And I don't have it on here because I just forgot about it until I was saying it just now. But the Microsoft Translator app will actually go through and let you have a two-way conversation. When you hold your phone out, you are able to set it up so that I'm basically, whatever I'm looking at is the person across from me is what they're saying, and vice versa. And so we could actually look at each other and speak to each other. But if I was in Germany, I could say, I speak English and they speak German. And so I would see what they were saying in English, and they could do the opposite, and they would see what I was saying in German. And it listens for you going back and forth. It's a really, really cool option, especially for those of us who love to travel and we don't always necessarily stick to the places where we speak the language. I talked about Presenter Coach for a brief second. So right here, when you do Rehearse with Coach, it will also check your body language if you want it to. And then you just go through when you start doing your Presenter Coach. Let me move so that I can actually see this. I don't know if y'all can see that you're in my way, but I can see that you're in my way. Okay, so here's my rehearsal coach. I could say start rehearsing. It doesn't know what your script says, so it's not like reading coach. It doesn't know what your script says. It's just going to go through and give you information about whether you are reading your script exactly. So if I were to say, it's learning, engaging a community online, Angela Burgess, French teacher and instructional technology specialist for Forsyth County Schools, secondary schools, at the end, if that was all I did, at the end, it would tell me that I was reading too much. So it does know what's on there, but like in your notes, it doesn't know that. And it will give you, try not to use filler words like, I may have mispronounced instructional. So again, same type of feedback here. And then when I end it, notice that it's going to go through and it's going to tell me, okay, how many slides did I rehearse? How much time did I spend? Was my pace good? Was I too fast? Was I too slow? How was my pace over time? It'll tell you to avoid repetitive language, to make sure that you're using inclusive words. So I think that's really awesome. What was your pitch? And then here's your body language. Notice that it's telling me to keep my gaze forward versus looking somewhere else. So I was facing away, and then so it took screenshots where I was good and where I was needed improvement. My originality, because even though I did read that one slide word for word, because I used other things and I talked about other things that weren't on that slide, it says that I have a good originality. And then I can rehearse again. The one downside to Presenter Coach is that because it doesn't show you your notes, if you're trying to practice with your notes, that can be a problem. Because you just can't see what your notes are. They're just gone. I think this is a really good idea because part of what we're trying to do when we have students do presentations is to not read the slides. So I think this is a good tool to share with students, to have them actually spend the time to practice their presentations before they get up and do those presentations in class. Especially if, say, for example, if you're an IB school and they have that interview that they have to do at the end of the IB program, this is a really good tool to get them to practice that presentation, make sure that they get it within the recommended period of time without speaking too fast. Have any of y'all used that presenter coach before? Okay. I love it. Like I said, when I was getting ready to practice, so Shannon, tip for you. When I was getting ready to do my dissertation defense, I did my dissertation in Canva, where we are now, but I downloaded it into PowerPoint and then practiced it with PowerPoint, just like over and over and over again, to make sure that I was doing the things that I needed to do. I've only got 2 more in here, and one of them is Microsoft Editor. I choose Microsoft Editor because it's also a Chrome extension. So even if you're not in your Microsoft product, if you're typing somewhere else, you also still have, generally speaking, you also have access to the Microsoft Editor. For example, it's not available in Canva. It'll tell you it's not currently supported on canva.com. But you can do all those same types of things. You can set what you want your proofing language to be. It will check spelling, grammar. You can do refinements. It will, in English, give you synonyms. It's not going to do synonyms in French. And if you go into your actual editor settings, you have all of these different options that you can go through. You know, how do you want to refine for clarity? Do you want it to look at the adjective order, adverb placement, all of those different things? And if I go to French, I still have many of those same options. So I could say that I want to speak in a formal language, or I don't want to speak in a formal language. I'm going to be very informal, so it's not going to check that for me. I can say that I want to make sure that I have non-discriminating language. So I want it to check, am I, recognizing sexual orientation, ethnic origin, sex, am I being sexist in my language? It will go through and check for all of those things. Again, nothing is perfect. So you might look at it and go, no, that is actually wrong. But being able to use that, I used to tell my students all the time, I know this is just how I am. I know not all language teachers feel that way. I would tell my students to put their documents in French and then use spell and grammar check, because I felt like I was teaching them a skill that they need to know how to use spell and grammar check. I don't feel like using spell and grammar check is cheating. We use spell and grammar check all the time, or at least I do, and I internally and sometimes externally mock people who clearly did not use spell and grammar check before they sent an email. Usually that's just internal. Every once in a while, if I'm with friends, I will do it externally as well.
But
but that's
language, as language teachers though, I think there's value there in why is that red squiggle there? And I'm noticing with each year, my kids don't pay attention to the squiggles. They're so used to them just being there that it doesn't connect that I should go back and look at this. And so I think actually using all of those checkers can be a really great learning point for the kids.
Making it as part of your lesson, as to, have a lesson on, here's what I want you to know, and here's what I want you to do, and maybe give them a practice passage that definitely does have mistakes, and see if they're able to use Editor to fix it. Or if you're using Google, just, have them use that, and can they actually fix the mistakes and explain why it was a mistake, or maybe explain why it marked it as a mistake, but that it's actually correct. Why is it correct? Use it as a teaching tool, because then you're teaching not just the language, but you're teaching them a skill that they need to know in the real world that we live in. And since that's my primary job now, is as an ed tech coach, that is me putting that hat on for a minute. And with French, so I said French in France, but you could, if you were teaching other languages, you can do French from the Congo, from Canada, from Cameroon, from Belgique, from all of these different. So if you're looking at different places, if you're focusing on different ways, maybe you have them do 2 different languages from the same language from 2 different countries, and talk about why it might flag it in one country and not flag it in another country. And so then you're starting to bring in some culture as well.
I think just that one's just right there, picking the language that I could imagine my kids having so many questions. They speak this language. What, just all of the, like, hey, it's not just French in this classroom and it's not just Spanish in this classroom, and that's not the only person who speaks it. Look at where these languages are around the world.
And this is just the ones that they have in here. That doesn't, obviously it's
Right.
not a all-inclusive
Comprehensive,
list.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously Spanish has a lot more options than French does, but there's all those different options for Spanish as well, which I think is awesome. You've got all the different languages for English, for heaven's sakes. So, excuse me. Okay. And then the last thing that I wanted to share, this is just kind of like my extras. Oh, and look, I didn't even finish taking these off. Oops, sorry. So one of the really cool things is with the app on your phone, if you have the Excel app, you can actually, so with your phone, with the Excel app, you can take a picture if you've got something that's on a spreadsheet, but you only have the paper copy. Maybe it's from like 1995 and it was passed down to you. And so you only have the paper copy and you do not want to transcribe the information that's in this paper spreadsheet into the actual program so that you can now manipulate the data. If you have the app, it will let you take a picture of that spreadsheet and then it will make the spreadsheet for you in the app, which then you can access on your computer using the magic of OneDrive. And so that's just something that I think is absolutely amazing. If you're using forms as a quiz, so this is one of those times where like Microsoft makes my head explode. When you're looking at forms, there's actually there's Microsoft Forms, but there's also, so here we have this other thing called Forms for Excel. And Forms for Excel is what you're going to want to use to do like a quiz. Whoops. Because when you do a Forms for Excel form, your responses are going to be in the cloud. If you do just a normal form, it's going to, every time you want to look at the results in a spreadsheet, you're going to have to download new results, which is just really frustrating. But when you do that, I could go through and I could go through and I can actually, I'm trying to find it. Can't find it. You can go through and set it so that there's a timer on it. So if you wanted to do a timed quiz, you can add a timer to it. You can also make it, you would probably not want to do it multilingual, but you could do it as multilingual. Again, going back to our ESL families, you could make that multilingual. You could also import your questions from Word or a PDF. So again, if you have your quiz that you were doing on paper pencil and you were printing it out from Word and then going and making copies, and you're like, actually, I don't want to grade those. I just want it to be in a Microsoft form. You can import that quiz from your Word document, or if you had it as a PDF, you could import it and it will make it all the questions for you, which again, that's just a huge time saver that I think is huge. Another thing that I really like is this little thing that hides over here, which is called the designer. So if you're trying to spruce up your document and you want it to look fancy but you're like, I'm not a graphic designer, I don't know what that should look like, you can open the designer and then it will apply the design to your document. And super quick, that was super fast, obviously, right? But it just makes it look a little bit more eye-catching in the visual world that we're in now. Anything that we can do to make things look a little bit more interesting and a little bit less boring, I think that's a good plan. And then you can show more themes. So if you're like, I don't really like those, you can go through, oh, look, I want that one that has some trees on it. I don't know why there's trees, except for the fact maybe with the word leaves, it's like, oh, maybe we should have some trees with leaves. And that's available in PowerPoint as well. So if you've got your PowerPoint presentation, you can go through, and with design, you could open Designer, and based upon the content that is in your slides, it can come up, well, that didn't do a really good job. That's not great at all. But it would go through and change my design. I don't like any of those design options. Those are all awful. And I believe that Designer, once you have your questions with your theme in a quiz, you can go through and change the theme here. So you could add different backgrounds and stuff. It will change all of those types of options. And those are my bonuses. Oh, the last one is to always, it has an accessibility checker built in. So if this is something that you're going to be sharing online with your students, you take advantage of its accessibility features, especially if you know that you have students who perhaps have low vision, or if they are using a screen reader, if their vision is so low that they're using a screen reader. Always make sure that you use that built-in accessibility checker to make sure that you're just being good. So it'll tell you what type of things you have, what type of warnings you have, some tips. Intelligent services, apparently I don't need anything. Mine is all good, so good for me. But yeah, so those are my things. Those are my tips. Do y'all have any questions?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Does the immersive reader work with a PDF?
No, but if you take that PDF and put it into your online, whatever your online platform is, there's a really good possibility that that immersive reader is in your online platform, and then it might work. So like we use Canvas as our LMS, and immersive reader is built into Canvas for us.
Okay. Just because so one of the things that's come up with our professional learning groups is that, so I work with around 100 teachers, and when we do a book study in world language, not a single one of the books in ACTFL's bookstore are available in any language other than English. And a lot of my teacher, which is kind of ironic given the mission of that organization, but it would be much more equitable and accessible for some of my teachers whose home language is not English, if they could have that read to them in their preferred language.
Yeah. I'm gonna open this PDF to see, does it work? No. Okay. I was just checking because I said that, and I just wanted to make sure. I was like, maybe let's double check, but no, yeah, it's not there. Any other questions?
No, but Teresa did mention that she's going to watch this later, so I will definitely send this out if you guys want. That was so much, Angela. I'm literally like, how have I been sleeping on all of these Microsoft things?
There's so much more. There's just so many things. So I just picked, these are the ones that like I actually use, because if I'm going to do this, I want to share the ones that I actually use, not ones that like I've just heard about that might be a good idea. Like these are the things that I actually use and that I will come to Microsoft for over using Google.
That is wild. I mean, I'm literally just like, I have said such terrible things about Microsoft for so long that now I feel really, really bad. I feel like you have to work harder to find the cool stuff. Like that's my problem. I have the patience of a gnat. So I don't.
Agreed.
So cool. Hey, since you're already sharing your screen, we go to the last slide. So we don't have to play.
Absolutely. Yes.
I just wanted to plug this.
Also.
And Teresa, I'm not sure if you're Spanish. I don't know if you're French or even in Georgia. In Georgia, we have this weekend d'immersion, and it is happening in February. And I got a phone call yesterday, and they're like, hey, we have a couple spots left. So if anybody in Georgia wants to send their kid to the immersion weekend, the French immersion weekend, or reach out to them. I think their email, the website is right there, but they have sort of extended it a little bit. So if you're interested in that, and also if you're interested in just like language stuff, that's not language and technology. The other PLC that I run is the rural language teacher thing. It's called Starlight. But next month, we're going to talk about success in lower levels. So if anyone's interested in that, share that around. We'd love to see you. And I want to say a massive, massive thank you, Angela, for
You're welcome.
blowing my mind with all the cool Microsoft stuff that I never would have
You're so
learned on my
welcome.
own. All right. Well, anyone got any last minute? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think I'll ever make the switch to being a Microsoft trainer over a Google trainer, but it definitely offers some really cool options for us.
I don't think I could spend the time to learn the things to do the Microsoft training. Like there's so much.
Yeah.
Like I'm still working on formatting tables in Word at this moment. Like that's where my brain is. But anyways, if y'all any comments, questions, anybody using anything really cool? Andrew, are you guys Google system? I mean, Google, Microsoft, what are y'all system-wide?
Google, but I've got a lot of options available.
Okay, cool. I'm glad that you mentioned that too, Angela, about Flip, because I use Flip so much, and using some of these little add-ons in Flip could be really, really interesting. And I hadn't thought about it.
I think using immersive reader in Flip, like asking your students to do that, because if we're wanting them to do a recorded response, maybe we want them to act the first time. We want to give them what it is that we want them to say. And so we could have them practice using the reading coach and immersive reader in Flip before they record their response to submit for us as the final thing. Obviously that, that's a pretty low level thing. We're not actually asking them to create a whole lot. But if we're trying to work on some tricky pronunciation, that's a really cool way to have them actually practice before they submit. And if I can get them to practice it 5 times before they submit it, I am thrilled.
Right. I mean, even some of the word, like I've got the same pronunciation errors over and over, and I tend not to focus too much on, are you getting it exactly right? But when the kids want to have that, like, why am I not getting these points, or why is it not sounding right? That's a great way of approaching it. And it's something that already used to, at least in my classroom, we're very used to Flip. So I love that.
And that's like a good formative for them, and true formative. And it's a formative that you don't have to assess. Right. Yes, it's being assessed by AI, but it's being assessed. It's giving them some feedback. It's giving them some things to practice before they give it to you, and then you assess it and with like your human brain.
Correct. I'm going to start using that probably next week. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody has any last minute questions, comments, now's the time before I close this out. I'm sorry I'm not as entertaining as Meredith.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
you're so welcome.
All right. Well, then I will go ahead and close this out, and I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I hope to see you in the future. Bye, everybody.
Bye.